The chill of the sterile examination room, the metallic tang of the instruments, the way the overhead fluorescent lights hummed a dissonant tune. All were a prelude to the disaster that was about to unfold. Layla, though she was known as Amal Hassan now, felt the familiar knot of dread tighten in her stomach. It was an unwelcome companion, this fear, but it was also a necessary one. Without it, she wouldn't survive. She shifted on the vinyl examination table, the pressure of the silicone belly a constant reminder of the charade. This was the moment it could all crumble. The false identity, the fabricated life, the hope of gathering crucial intelligence, all hinging on her ability to maintain a convincing facade in the face of what she knew was coming. It had been 4 months since the decision, 4 months of meticulous planning, relentless training, and the complete shedding of her old self. Layla, the seasoned Mossad operative, was gone. In her place was Amal Hassan, a 28-year-old Lebanese woman, 7 months pregnant and widowed, her life a carefully constructed tapestry of lies. Every detail, from the slightly uneven hem of her abaya to the way she cradled her lower back, had been meticulously rehearsed. The documents, the backstory, the relationships, all forged with a precision that bordered on art. Mossad's forgers had crafted a birth certificate, backdated school records, and a detailed medical history complete with fake ultrasound reports. Even her deceased husband, a construction worker named Hassan Karim, was a fabrication. His fabricated death certificate, a cruel twist of fate. The entire charade was a weapon, and Layla, as Amal, was the trigger. The training was brutal. Layla had spent weeks learning the nuances of the Lebanese dialect, perfecting the subtle gestures and social cues that could make or break her cover. She memorized every detail of Amal's fabricated life, from her favorite childhood foods to the name of her doctor in Beirut, Dr. Mahmoud Saab. The physical transformation was equally demanding. The prosthetic belly, a 20-pound weight of medical-grade silicone, had become an extension of her own body, a constant ache and a physical reminder of the precariousness of her mission. She'd practiced the pregnant woman's waddle, the careful way of sitting and standing, until they were second nature. More than anything, though, she had to master the art of fear, to control her breathing, steady her voice, and maintain eye contact even when her heart hammered against her ribs. The interrogation room was a crucible, where she learned to lie with conviction, to weave intricate webs of deception while facing the unwavering gaze of simulated Hezbollah interrogators. Now, as she walked the streets of Tyre, it was not Layla who walked, but Amal. With each step, each greeting, each shared meal with the women in her apartment building, she built up a carefully constructed trust. She was a vulnerable woman carrying a child, a woman who, if questioned, would always have an answer, a woman who would do anything to protect the life growing inside her. That, at least, was the intention. But a storm was gathering, and in a few moments the illusion of safety would be over. The cold steel of the speculum felt like a brand against her skin, each click of the instrument a hammer blow against the fragile facade she had so painstakingly built. This was the moment, Dr. Hamza's examination, that would either solidify her cover or shatter it into a million bloody pieces. The Beirut hospital was her shield, her meticulously crafted medical history, the foundation upon which her entire persona rested. The Mossad, with their penchant for technological subterfuge, had woven a web of deceit around Rafik Hariri Hospital. From within the bowels of the organization, a sympathetic doctor, paid handsomely and sworn to secrecy, fed her records into the system. False ultrasound scans, carefully crafted to match the supposed gestation period, were uploaded to the hospital's database, creating a tangible, verifiable trail. Fake vaccination records, dental appointments, and even a childhood bout of measles, all meticulously fabricated and entered into the digital realm. The architects of this deception had thought of everything, But the real challenge lay not in the digital machinations, but in the human element. The pressure to maintain this illusion was a constant, gnawing anxiety. Layla, or rather Amal Hassan, had to embody the weariness of pregnancy, the subtle shifts in her gait, the gentle sway of her hips, the ever-present hand resting on her lower back. She had to master the medical jargon, the specificities of prenatal care, the anxieties of an expectant mother. It wasn't enough to just look pregnant. She had to be pregnant, at least in the eyes of everyone she encountered. The car ride into the hospital itself was a performance, the taxi driver oblivious to the life-or-death stakes. The hospital buzzed with activity, a symphony of hurried footsteps, ringing phones, and the sterile smell of disinfectant. Layla Amal navigated the maze of corridors, her heart a frantic drum against her ribs. She was a ghost in this place, a phantom patient existing only in the digital ether. Her appointment with Dr. Saab had been carefully orchestrated, a brief consultation to create the illusion of ongoing care, a routine checkup that would legitimize her presence in the system. The clinic was a cramped office. The doctor, a jovial man who, like the taxi driver, knew nothing of the truth. He smiled, made small talk, asked about the baby's health. He did a quick examination. She answered all his questions, but knew it was not enough. Then came Dr. Hamza's proposal, the suggestion that she transfer her care to his clinic, that it would be easier, more convenient, closer to home. The pressure had been mounting, a slow, insidious squeeze that threatened to crush her. A transfer meant scrutiny, new examinations, the potential for exposure. This medical gamble was now the pivot point where the entire operation could fall apart. But there was another weapon at her disposal, one she hoped would be enough. Fear. The fear of something going wrong. Fear was a powerful motivator, a tool that could shape reality, and in this case, save her life. Dr. Hamza's warm smile felt like a physical blow against Layla's fabricated reality, the Doppler machine in his hand, a ticking time bomb poised to detonate her carefully constructed deception. Tyre welcomed Layla with a humid embrace, the air thick with the scent of salty sea and something else, something she couldn't quite place, a hint of jasmine maybe, mixed with the ever-present undercurrent of suspicion. The narrow streets buzzed with life, overflowing with vendors hawking their wares, children chasing stray cats, and the low rumble of conversation that followed her everywhere. Finding the apartment had been easy enough courtesy of the Mossad-planted intermediary. It was a modest place. 2 small rooms, a tiny balcony overlooking a courtyard where laundry danced on the line. But it was hers, her sanctuary, at least for now. The women of the neighborhood, a sisterhood bound by shared experiences and traditions, had quickly embraced Amal. They clucked around her like mother hens, offering advice and unsolicited opinions about everything from baby names to the ideal birthing position. Among them, the subject of Dr. Hamza's clinic, just a few blocks away, came up frequently. The general consensus: he was a saint. His prenatal care was considered exceptional, and the best part? It was far more convenient than trekking all the way to Beirut and Dr. Saab. The first suggestion was gentle, a subtle nudge during a casual conversation over sweet mint tea. "Amal, why don't you switch doctors? Dr. Hamza is wonderful, truly. He's so attentive, and his office is just around the corner. Much easier for you, dear." Layla feigned a polite smile, a practiced flicker of gratitude, masking the icy dread that clawed at her insides. Each subsequent mention brought her closer to the edge of the precipice, each casual observation a tightening of the noose. The women's concern wasn't malicious, but it was relentless. The unspoken pressure to change doctors was building, a slow, insistent tide threatening to breach her carefully constructed defenses. The question she'd been dreading finally came, not in the bustling market, but in the intimate circle of a women's health group. They were discussing remedies for morning sickness, sharing herbal teas and ancient remedies, when one of the women, a woman with knowing eyes and a gentle touch, turned to Layla and asked, "So, Amal, have you thought about Dr. Hamza? He has all the latest equipment, you know. He has that thing that—" She paused, searching for the word. "The Doppler. He can listen to your baby's heartbeat any time." The Doppler, that innocuous yet deadly instrument. In that moment, Layla's meticulously crafted world threatened to shatter. The Doppler was the linchpin. A quick scan would reveal the truth. No heartbeat, no baby. Just medical-grade silicone. The room swam slightly, the women's faces blurring at the edges as she struggled to maintain her composure. She forced a shaky smile, the carefully rehearsed words catching in her throat. I am very grateful, but I am used to Dr. Saab. He is a very good doctor and very familiar with my history, especially with what happened before." She let the unspoken tragedy hang in the air. The miscarriage, a potent weapon in her arsenal, the reminder of heartbreak, a shield against scrutiny. The women softened, the pressure eased. For now. But the Doppler, the looming threat of the Doppler, remained. A silent, deadly witness, waiting to expose the lie. The air in the Tyre municipal offices hung thick with the scent of stale coffee and bureaucratic dust. But for Layla, the metallic tang of fear was the most potent odor. A few hours from now she would face an examination that would unravel everything, her meticulously constructed world, collapsing under the probing of a medical instrument. But for now, she needed to play the pregnant woman, the tired widow, the innocent Amal Hassan one more time. Opposite her, behind a cluttered desk, sat Karim, a man whose bland exterior belied a sharp intelligence, the sort that could dismantle a lie with a single, pointed question. Karim had been introduced to her under the guise of the housing authority, a bureaucratic necessity for new residents. He was a man of routine, the kind who arrived at the office precisely at 8 a.m. His tie always perfectly knotted, his gaze never quite meeting hers. He was a spider spinning a web, and Layla, as Amal, had walked right into it. She'd been lulled into a false sense of security by the community's embrace, by the shared cups of tea and the comforting weight of the pregnancy belly. But Karim's scrutiny was a constant, a low hum of unease beneath the surface of her carefully crafted facade. He started with the mundane, the polite inquiries designed to put her at ease, a practiced technique she recognized from her training. He asked about the apartment, its size, the landlord, her daily routines. Layla answered, her voice even, the practiced cadence of Amal Hassan flowing from her lips. She spoke of the heat, the difficulty of the long walks to the market, the exhaustion that clung to her like a second skin. Each answer was a carefully constructed brick in the edifice of her deception. But she knew that cracks were beginning to show. His questions became more pointed. He inquired about her husband, Hassan Karim, the construction worker who had, according to her fabricated history, died in an accident 2 years prior. Layla described his work, the long hours, the camaraderie of the building site, the simple joy they had shared in their brief marriage. It was a performance honed over weeks of practice, but the strain of maintaining it was starting to show. She could feel the pulse in her temple quickening, the subtle tremor in her hand. As she reached for the tea Karim offered, then came the question that she had dreaded. "You mentioned Dr. Saab in Beirut. He's been handling your prenatal care, correct?" The innocuous words carried the weight of the coming storm. "Parking is terrible in Beirut. What car do you drive, Amal?" The trap had been laid. The bait was set. Layla took a deep breath, fighting the urge to flee. She had meticulously crafted her story, her fake records, and now her fate hinged on the next few words. "We usually take taxis," she managed, her voice a little breathless. "Husband works, so he needs the car, and the parking fees are terrible." She didn't have a car. She'd taken taxis for doctor appointments in Beirut, a calculated risk. But she'd also been warned about the power of the smallest inconsistency. Kareem's eyes narrowed ever so slightly. He nodded, but his gaze lingered, probing, searching for any flicker of doubt. The pregnant woman had been playing her role perfectly, but it was just a matter of time before it all fell apart. The ultrasound gel was cold on her belly, a stark contrast to the sweat that slicked her palms. Every tick of the clock in Dr. Hamza's office felt like a hammer blow against a fragile dam. She knew with a certainty that clawed at her insides that the next few minutes would either solidify her cover or shatter it into a million bloody pieces. The physical disguise was a marvel of engineering, a testament to the meticulous planning of Mossad. The 20-pound silicone belly adhered perfectly to her torso, mimicking the gentle sway of pregnancy with unsettling accuracy. Every morning, Layla, or rather Amal, woke and slipped it on, a second skin that she wore with a strange, almost comforting familiarity. It was a constant reminder of the stakes, of the life she was pretending to carry, and the life she might lose if she failed. The clothes, too, played their part, loose-fitting dresses and sensible shoes designed to further the illusion. She'd spent countless hours practicing the waddle, the hand on her lower back, the way she carefully lowered herself into chairs, the subtle signs of exhaustion that she'd perfected into an art form. But the physical was only the beginning. The medical knowledge she'd absorbed was a labyrinth of facts, figures, and jargon. She could discuss gestational diabetes with authority, rattle off the names of prenatal vitamins, and offer advice on morning sickness with the practiced ease of a seasoned mother. The records, of course, were fabricated, the result of years of planning and the cooperation of corrupt officials. Her file, complete with ultrasound images and a detailed medical history, was a testament to Mossad's ability to weave intricate webs of deception. She knew the name of her doctor in Beirut, Dr. Saab, his supposed office, his preferred methods. She knew the date of her last appointment, the details of the fictitious medication he'd prescribed. It was a performance that demanded complete commitment, a flawless recitation of a carefully constructed reality. The pressure, though, was unrelenting. The need to maintain the charade 24/7 was exhausting. Every conversation with the women in the community was a test, a constant stream of questions about cravings, baby names, and nursery preparations. Each response had to be authentic, tinged with the genuine anxieties of a woman carrying her first child, yet carefully controlled, never revealing too much, never a hint of the truth. She longed for a moment of genuine respite, a chance to shed the weight of the disguise, to be Layla, not Amal, even if only for a few stolen moments. But the fear of exposure was a constant companion, a shadow that clung to her, reminding her of the ever-present danger. She recalled the training, the mock interrogations, the brutal drills designed to break down her defenses. They'd taught her to control her breathing, to maintain eye contact, to master the micro-expressions that could betray her. They'd drilled it into her, the ability to lie with a straight face, the capacity to think clearly under immense pressure. Now, as she sat on the examination table in Dr. Hamza's office, the lessons of Mossad were all that stood between her and death. The cold gel, the curious doctor, the constant pulsing dread, these were the tools of her trade, the weapons in her arsenal. And the time was now to perform the role of her life. The air inside the Hezbollah logistics office, heavy with the scent of stale coffee and desperation, pressed against Layla's skin like a suffocating shroud. Each syllable of the overheard conversation a potential nail in her coffin. She sat in the waiting room, a simple bench and a plastic chair her only companions. From behind the closed door, the voices of men, etched with urgency, hinted at a storm brewing on the horizon. A major weapons shipment, that was the key phrase that began the puzzle. It was a race against time, where every second brought her closer to exposure. The waiting room, a space of sterile normalcy, held a deceptive serenity. Sunlight filtered through the dusty window, illuminating particles dancing in the stagnant air. The walls, painted a drab beige, offered no comfort, no solace. Her belly, a 20-pound burden of silicone and deception, felt heavy against her thighs. She fought the urge to shift, to alleviate the pressure, knowing the smallest movement could betray her. Her mind became a kaleidoscope of fragments, maps, codes, faces, each piece of the puzzle demanding her attention. Her eyes scanned the room, observing the mundane. A worn magazine, a cracked ashtray, the subtle tremor in the worn linoleum tiles. But her ears were her true instruments. Every word, every hushed tone, every change in cadence of the conversations happening behind the door were dissected and analyzed. She closed her eyes for a moment, letting the muffled voices wash over her. Next week, south of the city, Tuesday. The words, though fragmented, ignited a fire within her. Tuesday. The information, if true, could prevent countless lives lost. But confirming the details without raising suspicion was a tightrope walk. With a practiced ease, she faked a yawn, placing a hand on her lower back to alleviate the pressure from the pregnancy. The gesture was a constant reminder of her precarious position, of the vulnerability she was using as her shield. Another woman entered the waiting room, her eyes darting toward Layla, assessing her. Just another pregnant woman waiting. The new arrival muttered a greeting, the sound barely audible over the hum of the air conditioning. Layla responded with a weary smile, exchanging a few polite words about the heat, the discomfort of pregnancy, the eternal waiting game. But inside, her thoughts spun like a compass needle. This woman, too, would be a potential source of information. Every interaction was a risk, every conversation a gamble. Days turned into weeks, each one a relentless cycle of observation and subterfuge. She frequented the local market, engaging in casual conversations with the other women, her voice soft, her manner unassuming. She learned of the upcoming religious celebrations, the intricate webs of social connections. It was through these subtle interactions that she began to piece together a picture of the target commanders, Ahmad Sulian, and the men who were always with him. The name of the city, the time of the meetings, the locations of the hidden weapon caches. She had bits and pieces, but never the entire picture. The pieces of the puzzle were starting to come together, even if the picture was still blurry. The scent of jasmine and wood smoke from the nearby homes seemed to taunt her with an unbearable nostalgia. The life she was pretending to lead, the connections she was making, were a potent siren song. She allowed herself these brief moments of fantasy, savoring the illusion of normalcy. For a few fleeting moments, she was not Layla, the Israeli operative. She was Amal, a pregnant woman awaiting her first child, dreaming of a future. But her reverie was often broken by the harsh reality that awaited her. The sterile fluorescent lights of the clinic buzzed, a sound that drilled into Layla's skull, as the nurse, a woman with tired eyes and a name tag that read Fatima, beckoned her into an examination room, setting in motion a chain of events that could unravel everything. Even now, weeks into her mission, the image of Dr. Saab's face flickered in her mind, a phantom reminder of the man whose likeness she impersonated with such clinical precision, and it felt like she was drowning in the ocean when there was no escape. Fatima's smile didn't reach her eyes as she asked Layla to have a seat, and a new layer of dread threatened to suffocate her. Each day had been a carefully orchestrated dance, a performance of pregnancy and vulnerability. The silicone belly, the slow waddle, the hesitant hand on her lower back, all were designed to disarm, to make her invisible. But now, in this small white room, the elaborate facade felt flimsy, a house of cards ready to collapse. She could feel the dampness of the silicone against her skin, the weight of it a physical manifestation of the lie she carried. Dr. Hamza's kindness was a double-edged sword, his genuine concern a comfort and a threat. She couldn't shake the feeling that he was too eager to help, too quick to dismiss her concerns about traveling to Beirut. Fatima moved with a brisk efficiency, her movements practiced and impersonal. She asked Layla routine questions, the kind she'd heard countless times. How far along? Any morning sickness? Any history of complications? Layla answered smoothly, reciting the fabricated medical history she knew by heart. But as the nurse prepared the examination room, Layla's anxiety spiraled. This felt different, more deliberate. The usual friendly banter was missing, replaced by a tense silence. The nurse's eyes were too observant, her every glance a question mark. The examination room was cold, the air thick with the smell of antiseptic. Layla sat on the edge of the examination table, her heart hammering against her ribs. The nurse, Fatima, asked a simple question that froze her blood. "I need to verify some details, Layla," she said, her voice devoid of warmth. "Could you give me your description again?" The trap was sprung. Layla felt a cold sweat prickling her skin. The nurse had contacted Beirut, contacted someone, likely at Rafik Hariri Hospital, probably to get a physical description of Amal. And that description wouldn't match the woman sitting before her. Layla's meticulously constructed identity was crumbling. She needed to think, to calculate, to find a way out of this impossible situation. But her mind was a whirlwind of panic. All her preparation, the months of training, the painstaking detail of her cover story seemed to dissolve in the face of this sudden, inescapable threat. Every muscle in her body screamed for her to run, to flee this sterile room, this death trap. But she forced herself to remain still, to meet Fatima's gaze with a steady, if strained, composure, knowing that one wrong move, one flicker of fear, and her mission, her life, would be over. The game had changed, and the rules, she realized, were now set by the enemy. The sterile white room swam into focus, the fluorescent lights buzzing a high-pitched drone that mirrored the frantic rhythm of Layla's heart. Dr. Hamza's kind face, framed by a neatly trimmed beard, was a deceptive calm in the gathering storm. He was smiling, a practiced, reassuring smile. But Layla knew, with a certainty that chilled her to the bone, that this smile held the key to her death or her freedom. "All right, Amal," he said, his voice gentle. "Let's just check on the little one, make sure everything is progressing nicely." He gestured to a small silver device on a nearby counter. A Doppler, the Doppler. It was a simple tool designed to listen to the heartbeat of the unborn. For Layla, it was a weaponized instrument of truth. The gentle hum of the machine, the probe's smooth surface, the promise of revealing life within, all of it was a lie, a carefully constructed illusion about to be shattered. The clinic room was small, smelling faintly of antiseptic and something floral, likely the lingering scent of a patient before her. Sunlight streamed through the lone window, illuminating dust motes dancing in the air, a stark contrast to the darkness gathering in her chest. She forced a smile, mirroring the doctor's, and climbed onto the examining table. The rough paper crinkled under her weight. Her body felt alien, weighed down by the 20-pound silicone belly, the fake pregnancy a constant reminder of the stakes. Her mind replayed the scene 100 times. Doctor Hamza would apply gel, move the probe over her abdomen, and then what? Would he look confused, suspicious? Or would the practiced professionalism of the medical world mask his shock while he alerted the authorities? Layla had been carefully, meticulously prepped. She'd studied medical charts, the rhythms of a pregnant woman's body, the nuances of Lebanese culture. Yet in this moment, all the rehearsals, all the training, felt flimsy. This wasn't a mission anymore. It was survival. She had only one choice, and it came down to controlling her emotions in this perilous moment. Dr. Hamza smoothed the cold gel onto her belly. His touch was professional, practiced, but her every nerve screamed danger. The probe found its place, and the room held its breath. Silence. For what felt like an eternity, there was only silence. Not the reassuring thrum of a heartbeat, but a void. Layla's heart hammered against her ribs, a frantic drumbeat against the silence of the machine. The doctor frowned, repositioning the probe. She could see a bead of sweat trickle down his temple. This was it. Just one moment, he mumbled, his voice tight. Layla held her breath, every muscle clenched, praying for the miracle, the glitch in the system, the anything that would allow her to walk out of this room. Then he looked up, his expression a mask. Amal, is there something you'd like to tell me? He asked, his voice softer. But her eyes locked onto hers with a piercing look of suspicion. The fluorescent lights of the clinic buzzed, a high-pitched drone that felt like it was drilling into Layla's skull. They had insisted. Kareem had insisted. A mandatory checkup. And the woman's face, the kind-seeming woman from the community circle who'd been so helpful, she smiled a little too sweetly as she led Layla down the sterile hallway towards a room with a closed door. The door to her doom. Her carefully constructed facade, the life of Amal Hassan, was moments from shattering. Layla clutched the fabric of her dress, her knuckles white. Inside, the air hung thick and heavy, a suffocating blanket of dread. She could smell the familiar antiseptic tang of disinfectant mixed with the faint scent of stale coffee, a scent that now brought a wave of nausea. Her heart hammered a frantic tattoo against her ribs, a frantic drummer counting down to the final beat. She could feel the weight of the silicone belly, a leaden anchor threatening to drag her down. Everything depended on the next few minutes. She'd spent weeks, months even, meticulously crafting this persona, this vulnerable, pregnant woman. The walks, the waddle, the hand on her lower back, the carefully rehearsed answers to every conceivable question. All of it, all the training, all the sacrifice, was about to be laid bare, exposed as a fraud. Dr. Hamza, a man with a gentle demeanor and kind eyes, gestured towards the examination table. "Please, Amal, have a seat." Layla managed a weak smile, her throat constricted, and she moved with deliberate slowness, forcing herself to maintain the practiced grace of a woman 7 months pregnant. She watched Dr. Hamza's movements, his calm, professional manner. He asked about the appointment with Dr. Saab in Beirut, and she repeated the familiar narrative about how well Dr. Saab knew her, how she didn't want to change. "Of course," he said, and then he turned towards the contraption on a rolling trolley at the corner of the room. The Doppler. Layla stared at the machine, her breath catching in her throat. The Doppler. It was a simple device, but in this moment it was a weapon. It would reveal the truth. There would be no heartbeat, no reassuring whoosh of blood through a tiny growing form. Only silence. She closed her eyes for a moment, picturing the escape plan, the coded phone call, the prearranged rendezvous. She needed time. She needed to stall. "Dr. Hamza," she said, her voice a thin thread, "is that really necessary? I'm feeling a little anxious today." The words felt foreign, clunky, but she managed to convey the appropriate level of fretfulness. He paused, his expression softening with concern. "Just a routine check, Amal. Make sure everything's all right, that the baby is doing well." He moved towards the machine, and his shadow seemed to engulf her. Her mind raced, searching for any opportunity to maneuver. She needed a reason, any reason, to prevent the scan. The lie, her life for the last month, was about to be unveiled, and there would be no going back. The woman from the community circle had remained, her gaze fixated. "Maybe another time," Layla whispered. She knew the game was up. The ultrasound probe was a metal serpent poised to strike, its cold tip reflecting the fluorescent lights of Dr. Hamza's clinic. Layla held her breath, the air thick with the scent of antiseptic and impending doom. The lie, the beautiful, intricate tapestry she had woven for 21 days, was about to unravel. She had to think fast, move fast. But her body felt leaden, weighed down not just by the fake pregnancy, but by the crushing weight of exposure. Now she had to escape. She'd spent the morning in a fever of preparation, her movements a carefully choreographed dance of normalcy. She walked to the market, bought the usual vegetables, exchanged pleasantries with the women, her smile a practiced facade. But inside, her mind churned. Karim, the housing authority official, had been polite, but probing. His questions, subtle as they were, had pierced the carefully constructed layers of her cover. Now, doctor. Hamza, the community's trusted physician, stood between her and survival. He wanted to perform a checkup, a routine examination to confirm her pregnancy, an examination that would expose the hollow shell of her deception. Back in her apartment, the air hung heavy with the silence of the impending storm. She knew the extraction protocol, the emergency escape route. She knew the phone number, the code phrase. She knew the gas station 15 kilometers north of Tyre, the rendezvous point. But leaving meant abandoning everything. All the weeks of preparation, the meticulous crafting of Amal Hassan, the patient infiltration, all for naught. Yet staying meant capture, torture, and a slow, agonizing death. She packed nothing. There was nothing to take, no mementos to cling to. She left the apartment precisely as she had found it, a testament to her ephemeral existence. She knew her escape depended on the element of surprise. Hezbollah would be watching. They would be expecting her to vanish into the shadows, to flee in the dark of night. She had to outsmart them, anticipate their moves. Her only hope was that she had accounted for everything and played her final hand. She shed the pregnancy belly, the heavy silicone, a suffocating weight on the floor. The adhesive left angry red marks on her skin, a tangible reminder of the charade. She swapped clothes, choosing dark, nondescript garments that would allow her to move freely, to melt into the shadows. At 2 a.m. she moved toward the back window, her heart a frantic drum against her ribs. She couldn't afford a single mistake. The city was a sleeping giant, and she was a lone ant trying to escape its notice. Each step was a step toward freedom or a step into the jaws of a trap. The night was black, the alleyways silent. She moved not with the waddle of a pregnant woman, but with the trained efficiency of an operative, every shadow a potential hiding place, every corner a potential threat. The wind whispered through the narrow streets, carrying the scent of jasmine and the distant sounds of the city. She kept her back against the walls, her eyes scanning the darkness. She was 3 kilometers from the extraction point when she saw them, the headlights. They were moving too fast, too deliberate. The car was closing in, cutting her off. She ran, her muscles straining against the sudden, violent exertion, her breath hitched in her throat, her lungs burning, the taste of fear metallic on her tongue. The operatives were on her tail. She was in a game of cat and mouse, and she was running out of time. The metallic tang of fear, thick and cloying, was the last taste Layla savored before the world dissolved into a blur of frantic movement. The air, heavy with the scent of oranges and damp earth, filled her lungs as she sprinted, the adrenaline a bitter elixir coursing through her veins. The alley, once a refuge, now felt like a suffocating trap. Ahead, she knew, lay the citrus groves, a network of narrow dirt paths and unseen obstacles, her only chance of outrunning Karim's hounds. Her carefully constructed facade, the waddle, the hand on her lower back, all shed in an instant, replaced by the honed instincts of a trained operative. The 20-pound silicone belly, a cumbersome burden for weeks, was now an impediment, a phantom weight that hampered her every stride. She ran, not as Amal Hassan, the pregnant widow, but as Lila, the Mossad agent, her muscles screaming in protest, her lungs burning with each desperate breath. The darkness was her ally, swallowing the shadows of the alley, obscuring her form from the streetlights that cast anemic pools of light. Each footfall was a calculated risk, a gamble against a twisted ankle or a misplaced step. She navigated the labyrinthine streets of Tyre, the familiar landmarks now alien, each corner a potential ambush. The distant shouts, the barking of a dog, sent icy tendrils of panic down her spine. They were close. The citrus groves loomed, a vast, undulating sea of green, offering both sanctuary and peril. The air here was different, cooler, infused with the sweet, almost cloying fragrance of blossoms and ripening fruit. She plunged into the darkness, the rough branches of the orange trees scratching at her clothes, tearing at her skin. The ground was uneven, treacherous with exposed roots and loose stones. She stumbled, caught herself, her heart hammering against her ribs, a frantic drumbeat against the silence of the night. The sounds of pursuit grew closer, the thud of heavy footsteps, the guttural commands in Arabic, the snap of a twig underfoot. They were gaining on her. She pushed herself harder, ignoring the pain, the burning in her lungs, the desperate ache in her legs. She knew these groves. As a child she had played hide-and-seek here with her cousins. Now she was playing for her life. She veered off the main path, squeezing through a narrow gap between two rows of trees, the thorns tearing at her face and hands. She could hear them, their voices close enough to touch. She ducked low, crawling through the undergrowth, her clothes snagging, her breath ragged. She had to find the extraction point, the designated coordinates, the promise of escape. The air thinned as she crested a small hill. Below she saw the faint glow of the gas station, a beacon in the inky blackness. It was a mirage, a cruel trick of the light. She had to make it. She forced herself to her feet, ignoring the searing pain, and ran, her body a taut wire strung between hope and despair. She could see the figures now, silhouetted against the weak light of the station, the extraction team, freedom. The air hung thick and stale inside the apartment, a suffocating blanket of silence that hadn't existed moments before. It was the silence of a tomb, a vacuum where the vibrant tapestry of Amal Hassan's life had been, thread by thread, expertly pulled away. The first thing Karim's men noticed upon breaking down the flimsy door was the stillness, an unnatural stillness, devoid of the expectant hum of a life soon to bring forth a child. Instead, the small space felt hollow, echoing with the ghost of a woman who had vanished into thin air. Dust motes danced in the slivers of sunlight that pierced the grimy windows, illuminating the remnants of the disguise. The medical records, the fabricated birth certificate, the ultrasound scans, all lay scattered across the kitchen table, discarded like useless props from a failed play. The careful construction of a life, a carefully orchestrated illusion, lay in tatters. Karim, his face a mask of cold satisfaction, gestured for his men to search. He needed answers, and he intended to find them, even if it meant tearing apart every fabric of the charade. The apartment itself was unremarkable, a testament to the meticulous ordinariness that had been the cornerstone of Amal's cover. A cramped bedroom with a simple bed, a tiny kitchen with a scarred countertop, a bathroom with a cracked mirror reflecting only the harsh reality of their failure. The air was heavy with the lingering scent of cheap coffee and something else, something undefinable, that hinted at a life lived on the edge of a knife. One of Karim's men, a young man named Ali, knelt in the living room, meticulously examining the dust on the floor. He ran a gloved hand across the worn wooden planks, searching for any sign, any clue that could lead them to the elusive spy. He found nothing. Another man, older and more seasoned, started a thorough check of the furniture. In the bedroom, he found the empty space where the pregnancy belly had been. He ran his hand over the sheets, trying to feel any impression, any trace of the weight that had, for weeks, defined the woman they were hunting. The only evidence of a life lived was the lingering smell of medical-grade silicone. Karim paced the cramped space, his frustration growing with each passing minute. They had been so close, so sure of their victory. They had unraveled the threads, exposed the lies, and yet she had slipped through their fingers like smoke. He glanced at the discarded medical records, the false documentation that had been his key to victory. It was all so meticulously crafted, a testament to the enemy's brilliance and audacity. He thought about the wedding celebration, the information, the possible weapons. This was not a failure of intelligence, this was a failure of control. He turned to Ali, who had risen from his examination of the floor. "Anything!" Ali shook his head, his face grim. "Nothing, sir. Clean sweep, no forced entry." She left willingly. Kareem's jaw tightened. Find her. He wanted to send a message. He wanted her to understand the cost of betrayal. He wanted to make her pay. They would find her. He would make sure of that. He turned to leave, his eyes lingering on the empty apartment and its unsettling emptiness. It was a silent testament to a mission accomplished and a victory denied. The phantom of Amal Hassan hung in the air, a reminder of the unseen war that raged, a war where the most innocuous disguise could be the deadliest weapon. The echo of the Doppler, its mechanical pulse a stark contrast to the thrumming in her own ears, was the last thing Layla heard as she slipped away, a ghost in the humid night. Now, weeks later, the apartment entire was cold, empty of the life she had faked, a silent testament to a mission accomplished and a life nearly lost. The scent of stale jasmine and cheap cigarettes lingered in the air, a phantom reminder of the women she had shared tea with, the conversations that had slowly, painstakingly, brought her closer to her targets. The discarded pregnancy belly, now a deflated mass of silicone, lay on the floor, a grotesque parody of the miracle it was meant to represent. Kareem's men had arrived to a scene of unsettling quiet, their boots crunching on the dusty tile. The air was thick with the residue of Layla's deception, a scent they couldn't quite place, a tangible feeling of violation. The meticulously crafted apartment, once a sanctuary of secrets, now revealed the cracks in their own security apparatus. They found no trace of Amal Hassan, the pregnant widow they'd been surveilling. Only the medical records, painstakingly fabricated, the birth certificate that had woven its way into the Lebanese system like a false thread. They'd been played. The initial shock gave way to a chilling recognition of the breach. Hezbollah's security, once considered impenetrable, had been sliced through by a carefully wielded scalpel of human psychology. The paranoia, which had always simmered beneath the surface, began to boil over. The community, once a tapestry of trust, unraveled thread by thread. Neighbors eyed each other with suspicion. The whispered rumors of an Israeli spy had taken root, fueled by Kareem's growing obsession. The intel Layla had gathered, though incomplete, was a treasure trove. It confirmed the timeline of the impending weapons shipment, estimated its location, and, most importantly, provided names, faces, and organizational structures. That information fed into an emergency intelligence sharing operation. In the following weeks, Israel's military prepared. The data was analyzed, cross-referenced, and used in a precise preemptive strike against the underground facilities and the incoming arms. The immediate aftermath was a cacophony of fear and suspicion within Hezbollah. Purges began, loyalty tests were demanded, and the iron grip of control tightened. Checkpoints were redoubled, every document scrutinized, every gesture interpreted as a potential threat. The organization began to devour itself. Trust, once the bedrock of their operations, was eroded, replaced by a corrosive distrust that poisoned their ranks. Informants turned on informants, each seeking to prove their innocence by implicating others. Layla's mission, therefore, had not only gleaned vital intelligence, but had also delivered a strategic blow, a psychological victory that crippled Hezbollah from the inside. They started questioning everyone, even pregnant women, even the elderly, even children. The paranoia was now their enemy, not the spy. The pregnant woman operation shattered the belief that their counterintelligence was strong enough to catch any infiltration, which created a wave of doubts that lead the organization to be more suspicious of their own people, therefore more divided, less efficient. That might have been the real victory, not the intelligence gathered, but the doubt planted. The apartment in Tyre was eventually cleared, the phantom of Amal Hassan wiped away, the medical records burned. Yet the echoes of her existence, of her audacious deception, would linger in the shadows, a constant reminder of their vulnerability. The war continued, as it always does, but the victory that Layla and her team achieved was not a victory measured in bombs and gunfire, but one measured in the erosion of an enemy's will. The air in the extraction vehicle was thick with the scent of pine and something else, something metallic and sharp, a smell that Layla knew was adrenaline. The operation was over. Amal Hassan, the pregnant widow of Tyre, was gone, but the ghost of her lingered, clinging to the silence that now filled the car, a silence punctuated only by the rhythmic thrum of the engine and the rapid, shallow breaths Layla took, trying to steady herself. She'd almost died. She was certain of that even now, with the reassuring bulk of the extraction team around her. The image of those headlights bearing down on her in the darkness, the rough hands grabbing at her, the shouts in Arabic, they were branded onto her memory. It was a testament to the meticulous planning, the layers of deceit, that she'd even made it this far. 22 days. 22 days as a lie, a performance, a vessel for a mission that had teetered on the edge of catastrophe. Now, hours later, as the landscape blurred past the darkened windows, she finally allowed herself to feel the profound exhaustion that had been building inside her, the weight of the endless vigilance, the phantom ache in her lower back, the insistent throb of the muscles in her legs. They were remnants of Amal, the woman she had become, the woman who, in a strange way, had been a shield. Her mind raced, replaying every detail, every conversation, every moment of heightened tension. Had she gathered enough? Had the risks been worth it? The answers, she knew, were buried in the data streams and the intelligence reports she had provided, and in the hands of those who would now use it. The intel she provided confirmed it. A major weapons shipment inbound, the approximate location of underground facilities, and the names of key commanders. Her presence, a seemingly insignificant detail, would create massive internal investigations inside Hezbollah and a deep distrust in their community. It was the human element, the vulnerabilities. Her role would be a catalyst, seeding doubt into an organization that relied on absolute faith and cohesion. The success of the operation, she knew, lay not just in the intelligence gathered, but in the ripple effect, the psychological impact, the shattering of the illusion of invincibility. Hezbollah had prided themselves on their impenetrable security. Her infiltration had revealed the cracks, the vulnerabilities they hadn't anticipated. It was a lesson in human nature, in the power of empathy and the limitations of technology. She felt the cold comfort of the fact that it could have been much worse. A few miles further, a moment of hesitation, and everything would have crumbled. She would have been another name whispered in hushed tones, another ghost in the annals of MSI. Instead, she was alive, her past life erased, her future unknown, her current one an echo of her former self. The next day, Amal Hassan ceased to exist. In her place, a new identity, a new life, woven from a different set of threads. It was the price of survival. It was also, in its own way, a kind of freedom, to be anonymous, to walk among people without the weight of secrets, to be ordinary. But the memories of those 22 days, the knowledge of the woman she had been, would always be with her. The phantom weight of a pregnancy that had never been. The knowledge that the most dangerous weapon of all wasn't a gun or a bomb, but the assumptions people made about each other, the way they saw the world, and that the invisible war, the one fought in shadows and whispers, never truly ends. It lives on, carried within the hearts and minds of those who dare to fight it.